Hello, beautiful, soulful woman, and welcome back to the podcast. So this is podcast episode 12, which means all the show notes can be found at blairrhianna.com/12. So this is episode 12. However, this is our first episode in our refined, more embodied direction for the podcast under its new name and branding called the Empowered Woman Podcast. And oh my God, does that feel so good to say? I can just feel it in my heart center. It just feels light. It just feels like a full-bodied yes. And if you have been following my own personal journey as I've been sharing it in different ways over the past few weeks of episodes, you'll know that this has been a bit of a long time coming for me of sitting in the business mentoring space, and which I have now identified as being my zone of excellence, which was in fact keeping me from my zone of genius, which is women's empowerment, helping women reconnect to themselves, come back home to their bodies, really claim ownership of their authentic truth and being able to express that and be a vehicle for that out into the world so they can authentically shine in life, love, business, and leadership. And it's funny how life is in circles, and for me this has very much been a full circle journey where when I first started my business it was in the area of helping women reclaim their empowerment and their sense of self and who they truly are in the love and relationship space. And then as my business evolved and as my business began to grow and create a lot of success, a lot of opportunities to be in business mentoring and helping other women build their businesses was presented to me. And so then it felt like, well, that was kind of where it would make sense to go. That would be where the logical procession and evolution of my business would be. And having spent some time in that space, even though I've had amazing results with my clients and I've loved being in that space, it ultimately is not authentic to me. And it was enabling me to play in my areas of strength, but not necessarily in my areas of growth, not in my areas of inspiration, not in those areas that scare the shit out of me and make me scared to my little bones to step into my spiritual leadership and really stand in my own authority as a woman and as a leader and say, this is what I do, and I am here to change the paradigm of how women see themselves. I am here to create a new wave of women where we bring further empowerment and embodiment and love into ourselves so that we can then bring forth the next generation of empowered daughters to create real change on the planet. And it's taken me a while to be able to, I'm not even going to say comfortably because it hasn't been comfortable, but to really allow myself to stand in that place and acknowledge that that is my journey, that is my path. And it took a little bit of a deviation for me to come back home to the truth of who I am and just let the F go of what makes sense from a business perspective. Let go of what is the most easily marketable and what is the most refined niche and positioning myself as an authority and an expert. Like, I've just let all of that go because I've done that and it worked, but it didn't work for the core of me. It didn't work for my true self. And in my mind, if I'm not going to have a business that is truly aligned to who I am and it feels really good to me, I might as well go and be paid to sit at a desk and make someone else's dreams come true. There's a reason why, as entrepreneurs, we have chosen the path that we're walking down, because it's not an easy path. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it's really hard. But we choose it because we're not choosing the path itself. We're choosing what we know it will give us. We're choosing the impact that we know that we're here to make. And if you're going to half-ass it, then you're going to get half-assed results. And you're going to feel half-assed in your own business. And because we're so closely linked to our businesses, you're going to feel half-assed in your life. And I wasn't prepared to create success for myself that way. And so I've had to come back home and refine and step back inwards and really just stop caring for a little bit. I just had to stop caring about what people would think, what my audience would say, the fear that people would unsubscribe from my mailing list or I'd get some kind of backlash or I would disappoint people. I really had to let that go. And I'm going to be sharing a lot more about how I did that and kind of letting you more behind the veil of myself and my own business journey so that you can draw some inspiration and know that it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to follow your heart's calling. It's okay to listen to your soul, especially in business. But that can sometimes be the place where, as intuitive, spiritual women, we lose that side of ourselves. And instead we get stuck in our heads and try to go with what works, what makes the most sense, what's the most obvious, easy win from a financial business perspective. And that's not how I'm choosing to thrive in my life and in my business and in my soul. And so here we are on the Empowered Woman podcast. And it just feels really good to be back, but at the same time feeling like I never left. Which is a very interesting feeling. And so for this week's episode, and to celebrate, I have invited on to the podcast an amazing woman who is here to share her own journey of walking the empowerment path and journeying back to herself, Miss Tammie Pike. And oh my gosh, this episode was so beautiful, and Tammie and I had such a wonderful discussion, and I can't wait to share it with you. But firstly, I want to share a little bit about Tammie. So Tammie is a self-love and self-empowerment coach, a Qoya teacher, a women's circle and self-love workshop facilitator, but she is also a woman, a mother and a wife who experienced a breakdown after suffering extreme anxiety when her youngest daughter experienced health issues. However, this was also a gift as it led to her breakthrough. She experienced her own spiritual awakening that took her on a self-discovery and self-love journey. And Tammie now holds and facilitates space for other women to do the same, where they receive a safe space, love, guidance, and support. She assists women in cultivating self-love through services, courses, workshops, events, and her self-love kit. And I think Tammie is the perfect guest to really kick us off on this empowered woman journey together. And so, here is Tammie. Hello, Tammie. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week.
So much, Blair, for having me. I know this is just going to be so much fun.
Yes, definitely. And definitely one of the things that we'll be talking about is something you just led me through, a kind of grounding practice to bring our energy into alignment and really letting go of the outcome of this episode, which I think is awesome. So I can't wait for us to talk about that. But one thing that I would love to hear about, because I know that your journey to being where you are is one that's had a lot of ups and downs, as I think a lot of us that are walking the spiritual path have experienced. So would you mind sharing with us what your journey has been that's brought you to doing the work that you're doing and being where you are?
Sure. So there's actually a couple of big things that have led me to this, and every time it's been even a bigger awakening. And the first one was growing up in a very abusive, toxic family. You know, really, it was a very unloving environment. And it took me a lot of years to come to the realization of actually how much I was holding on to my past and being the victim, and really letting myself not be present in who I am today. Rather, I was always back in the, how could that happen to me? And it took me many years to let go of a lot of that hurt. And even before I started my full-on spirituality awakening, it was doing little bits here and there and just dabbling. And then I had children, and each child has brought their own lessons. And it wasn't until Brookie, my last and youngest little daughter, was born that she had health complications. And at 9 weeks old, she was rushed to hospital with febrile convulsions, and she stopped breathing. And the trauma that come from that was, they had to, I was just a mess because, as a mum, my role is to protect and keep my daughter healthy. And in the moments when they were, doing a spinal tap and they were, trying to get intravenous into her, and they couldn't multiple times, and I'm screaming at the doctors and, all this kind of thing. And how Brookie was also in that just really broke me apart. From that moment on, Brookie was then, regularly unwell, and we were told to go down the conventional path. And I just couldn't. I had this knowing deep inside me that this was to be done differently. And it meant going against everyone else's advice, especially, the doctors. They're telling me to, give her half-dose antibiotics until she was 18 months. And everything in me just rejected that. And I was just lucky that there were people around to support me in making different decisions in the most unknowing way. Like it was a student pediatrician just saying, start becoming empowered, start researching. And it's these things that we forget that we actually have a choice in, to be empowered to find the information and say no against, people who we see as our, the more knowledgeable and more knowing than us. But it's this thing that we have to trust as a woman and even men, that when we have this knowing, to actually follow it. So it led me on this path of healing my daughter naturally and alternatively to full health now. Like she's 4 and she's just thriving. But about 18 months after she was born, 14 to 18 months, I had this breakdown where every day I was suffering anxiety after her incident in hospital. And I was a mess on the floor. I couldn't be home by myself. I was out walking, around the shops, or I'd go just driving. I'd just put my audiobooks on and just drive because I just couldn't deal with my reality at the moment. And in that time when she was always sick and unwell, and I was always checking her temperature and, making sure, all these different things were happening for her. And it seemed for me like my whole world had stopped existing. My other children, my husband were on the outside of me trying to heal my daughter. And then myself, I didn't even care about myself in that moment. Like it was that, like even to the point where I wouldn't eat because I was just so fearful and just watching my daughter, she slept on me for 6 months. It was all these things that led to that breaking. And it's quite interesting because as a mum for me, I found that little bits being married, and I gave most of myself to my husband, and having children, I gave even more of myself to my children, my family, trying to make everything perfect as, we look out to society and see what a mother is supposed to be. And all those expectations and those limiting beliefs made me feel that I wasn't enough as I was. And like I keep coming back to, it was that breaking point where I was just a mess on the floor again. And it was like this divine thought, like a thought that I've never had in my life before, saying that, Tammie, you are worthy. You are worthy of actually living your life. And it was in that moment, I just went, I deserve more. I deserve more, and I want more than being on the floor crying in a mess every single day, being fearful. And, my daughter was healthy at that stage, but this residue of fear, I just couldn't shake. And then that led me onto the path of finding different modalities that I wanted to heal through, then becoming a teacher. I went and done the courses, and now I teach it and hold services to provide a space for women to go through their own transformational and healing. So that's what it's led me to today. And it's just been such an amazing journey that I have to share one more thing.
Yeah, cool.
In the midst of all that, I was seeking psychic guidance because I loved psychics, and like I still do. I think they're amazing. But I was always seeking it to try and help fill me with not so much fear because of the future. I always wanted to know what the future was about. And one of the psychics that I really connected to, she said to me, this is the biggest lesson you're ever going to have. And you're going to be so thankful for it. And I just wanted to scream out, how dare you tell me this is my most amazing lesson, that you're so lucky, you get to experience all this, because in that moment I was so fearful. But if I can just share and shed some light on, it's usually in our biggest adversities that we learn the biggest lessons. We learn to be our true selves. We get rid of all these layers we have around us, because there's nothing left when you break apart. You have to put yourself back together, and you get to choose on how you do that. And I do, always say this in my groups, and that it is within those moments where you think you can't do any more that you truly find who you are. And, it's been, for me, that has been my journey. So, yeah.
Wow, that's so powerful. And actually, I felt that in the core of my being when you had that moment of just hearing that you were worthy. Like I really felt the vibration and the intensity of that. So that's so incredible. And what really struck me out of your whole journey is, you were talking about how you'd kind of given away parts of yourself to these external forces, but when it came to your child and her health, you stood up to one of the biggest authorities that we have in this Western culture, which is the medical system and the Western medical paradigm and the intense beliefs and dogmas that come in that. And so for you to have been down that journey of giving away your power and then to stand in what was left that was yours and face, the representation of an institution, that's incredibly powerful. So I really wanted to honor you for that, because out of everything that you were describing, that for me felt like a really pivotal moment that, you know, then led to those spiritual awakenings that you were describing.
Yeah, most definitely, Blair. And I also want to say in that moment, it was the most loneliest time I've ever experienced because my husband didn't agree with me. You know, I had my parents and my sister, but they still weren't, you know, sure. You know, they still have that fear of the authorities figure in the doctors. And also, you know, I lost many friends from this because they couldn't understand how I could go down the alternative route and how I could trust my health in a homeopath or a naturopath, you know, and a kinesiologist and all those different things that I was doing. And they just couldn't understand it. And I know that those moments helped me stand on my own 2 feet. It was the first time in my life I wasn't banking on someone else supporting me. I wasn't needing anyone else to say you're doing a good job. I would have loved that because I did feel lonely, but it really made me stand in my truth and what I believed in. And I just was so fired up that there had to be a different way. And, you know, to be able to have the research and go to the doctors, I've done the research. This is what the stats are saying. This is what the, you know, the scientific, you know, what do they do when they do those papers on, you know, probiotics versus antibiotics? And they had nothing to come back at me with, you know what I mean? Like, and they just said, yes, this is true. And basically, but this is our protocol and that's what we have to tell you to do. So, you know, for me to truly get to a point where they just said, well, yeah, you know, what you know is right, but still this is what we have to do and take those steps. So it was very confirming for me that I was doing the right thing. But again, like if anyone's going through this, I know how lonely it can be because especially when your child's not sick, like she wasn't dying, but she was extremely ill and in all ways. But because she was perceived good on the outside and what she was suffering with was, you know, a dual chamber kidney and 2 ureters and recurrent UTIs, they don't think it's a scary thing. But for a mum or a parent who's going through this, it can be so traumatic and so fearful as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's so fascinating that kind of this is where our conversation has begun, because whenever I invite a guest onto the show, I'm a bit of a pattern seeker, so I like to kind of feel into where the common thread will be, and our one's just kind of gone bang, like right in the face, because everything that you echoed, everything that you've said has very much been my own experience as well, you know, dealing with chronic ill health and nearly dying in hospital and things like that a few years ago. And so yeah, I'm very, very touched by what you've just shared. And I know that a lot of women will be as well, whether or not they're mothers. But I do think that there's an extra, and I'm not a mother yet, but I can appreciate that there's an extra level of veracity that is accessed when a mother's child is in peril. And we tend to be able to, as women, as, you know, the nurturers and as the caregivers, we tend to be able to tap into that extra level of fire that we can struggle to find for ourselves. But you were able to have that moment of being able to awaken that and ignite that, and then being able to feed that through and now be delivering that in the way that you are to the women that you serve is quite incredible.
Thank you so much, Blair. But like you know, for me, it's empowered me. It's empowered my whole family now. And the thing is, and like what you're doing, you're showing up and sharing with the world, right? You're doing and sharing your message on the most authentic way, which is just being you and doing these conversations and doing your work. And the thing is, what we even forget, even if you're a mum, not even a mum, a woman in this world where you're empowering yourself by saying no to something and you're sharing that, you get to, you know, share that choice and that empowerment with others, that yes, you have a choice. Yes, you can give yourself permission to say, no, I don't want to take that medicine, or even ask the questions. Why are you giving me that? What are the side effects? Like all these things, we start becoming so empowered that we never knew we could. And it's just so amazing. And always having that knowledge that we're always, you know, being fully aware, we're doing our own research. We're not just saying it because we want to, but really becoming empowered in all areas of our life and not being dictated to on what's right or wrong for the mass, but what is right and, you know, not so good for us, for our unique selves. So
yeah. 100%. And I think even beyond the research element, it really invites you and in a lot of ways forces you to have to go within and find your own barometer, your own inner compass, and find your own true north for what is the most authentic and aligned and most loving soul medicine for you, beyond just, you know, the form of medicine in terms of prescription. So I'd love to hear a bit about Qoya is something that you and I were talking about, and it's something I'd never heard of before. And I love the idea, and particularly with my background as a kinesiologist and energy healer, I love talking about the mind-body connection and really being able to tap into the body's inner knowing and using that as a guidance system in our lives. So would you mind talking us through a bit of that from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, I was at the point where I'd done a lot of healing, and yet I was still in the masculine energy, coming from a background of working in only with men and always having my body for it to be for sexual purposes, not for essential, connected to me, feminine, divine energy. And it's funny too, because I didn't have many women friends at that time because, again, when you can't accept the feminine essence in you, you can't really connect with it in another woman. And so what happened was I was at the point in my life where I really want to connect back to my body. Like, this is my vessel. I don't want to hate it anymore. I don't want to be disconnected because it's done so much for me, and I want to feel good. I just want to feel good in myself. And I had been searching for over 9 months, and again, 9-10 months. And, 5 Rhythms came up and all these other ones. And then one day I was on the couch just behind there, like looking on my laptop, and up came this Qoya, and I was like, what is this? And the creator is Rochelle Sheik. She's from America, and she has done so much spiritual work, shamanism, and, just amazing, amazing work. And she's a yoga teacher. She's done dance for her whole life. And in her video of the introduction, like, I was just crying. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what the hell? But it resonated so deeply. I couldn't stop. I was just bawling my eyes out. And then she invited us to, try a movement. And I picked the hip opening. Now, I'll share a bit more about Qoya in a minute, but this is where I was like, what is Qoya? How does it feel? How does it work? And anyway, I put it on my TV, and I did this hip opening. Now, for me, this is where I've had the most hurt, is in my sacral area, and a lot of disconnection to my femininity, from my truth, from actually believing in myself, all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting because as soon as I started doing it, again, I just started crying. And because it's not just a movement, like you just go out and do this movement and, move your body like this, it's asking you, it invites you, how does it feel in your body when you actually allow that connection into your hips? How does it feel when you move your body in a way that feels good? How can you allow it to feel good? And I just broke down because it was the first time in my life that I had actually given myself permission to feel good in my body, to actually listen to the most feminine area of my body and really connect with it. And immediately, old wounds came up to, why I had suppressed it. And it was just such a healing experience for me that I had to do more. And so I practice it. There was only a couple of people in Australia that does it. And so I actually had to go to New Zealand to do my teacher training, and twice within a month of each other, I think, so I could be a full-blown teacher with Qoya. But what happened was magic. Once I fully started getting into Qoya and I experienced the teacher training, it was like all this disconnection to my feminine self was healed. And being surrounded by 26 other women, you think, could be a bit iffy. It was just so much love. It was so much sisterhood, and it was a balm for my soul. Like, I have never felt so held, loved, and supported in my life. And so Qoya is a movement for women to remember their essence is wild, wise, and free. And it's using the wisdom of yoga, the wise of the connection to our body, and the freedom to feel pleasure in how we connect and move within ourselves. It's also a way for us to express words that we can no longer, or we can't even, use words to express. So what we do is, those times where you just feel so much love for, the most beloved person in your life, or the sunset, and these really beautiful things that we get to experience, but we don't know how to express them. And so Qoya gives us those moments to connect to those feelings, to really embody it, because this is the thing, we can know something, but it isn't until we embody it that we truly can feel it. So Qoya allows us the space to do that. And it's 13 pillars. So we go through the breathing intention setting. And first we pick a theme. And We do it we have an altar, we have oracle cards, and like it's just so sacred and has so much ritual. It's so deep in the women sacredness. It's just amazing. And we go through the circling and heart opening and then hip opening, and then we do yoga as prayer, which is really a different way of being, because in our everyday life, we're always trying to focus on how can we, move our body to perfection? How can we make everything a perfect movement? But even in yoga, the invitation there is, how can I move my body with more sacredness? How can I let it be a prayer to myself or to whoever you believe in, and then we go into the shadow, because a lot of things we do, we always about being positive, positive, positive. Isn't it? Like, you got to be happy, you got to be happy, you got to do this. But what is life if we can't experience the polarities, so what happens is in the shadow dance, you're invited to feel in your body, how does it feel when? And if the theme is, say, sisterhood, and I invite the women in my group, in my circle, how does it feel in your body when you can't connect to that femininity in yourself? How does it feel in your body when you feel alone from, those in your tribe? All these things we take it through, and then that woman has space to move her body, to listen and express these heavier, darker feelings, so we can let them go, so we don't have to suppress them. Because as we know, women in general are just so good at suppressing emotions. Everyone in general in the society are really, so well versed at doing this, because this is the way we've been taught. But this gives us space to actually feel and express and let it go. And then we go into our shaking and letting it go. And I'd love to invite you right now just to experience something if you'd like.
Yeah, of course. I'd love that.
Okay. So there's a story with Rochelle Sheik, and it's about shaking. So whilst I'm talking, I'm going to ask you to shake your right hand as hard as you can. That feels good for you. So shake, shake, shake.
Yeah, I'm sorry for any listeners that are potentially going to hear some clanky, but at least you know I'm doing it.
And so even I invite the people listening to shake your hand as hard as, as fast as possible. And so the story goes that once upon, there's a gazelle running through the desert. And anyway, I nearly gets her, but she gets away. And the thing is, the gazelle goes over and she just shakes. She shakes it off, right, and lets it go. She doesn't go to therapy for 10 years. She doesn't, on that, I nearly died that time, and oh my God, she didn't. She shook it out. And it's also been researched that children and animals, especially dogs, when they experience trauma, like in the war zones and all that kind of thing, what they found is that these children shake, and they shake and they shake and they shake. And it's like releasing that pent up, emotion of fear and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. And then when they stop, so stop your hand, how does that feel compared to your left hand?
It just feels very light and fluid. And it feels like my, the barrier of my skin has become fluid with its environment, whereas I'm very aware of the contours of my left hand, whereas the right hand has kind of developed a sense of oneness, which is very cool.
So this is an amazing tool anyone can give to themselves and to have in their toolkit, because I like having people having a toolkit that they can go into and use. And their toolkit is in the, in the ether. Like, it's not actually a real toolkit, but it's in their mind, in their consciousness. And this is the tools they can have. And shaking for me has been a massive tool in helping me express and release emotions that no longer serve me. So, especially after coming out of the shadow dance, we go into the shaking. And it's so amazing seeing women going from, really, going from that space of where they're delved into that shadow side of themselves and then letting it go. And then at the end, that brilliant smile or just their energy, and they're just feeling so good in their body, and they've just let go of all this stuff that no longer serves them. And then they come back and going, oh my God, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
But they did it for themselves. They gave themselves permission. They took part in the circle, and they now have let go of whatever it was they're experiencing as a shadow side and allow it to come to the light. But they're being the vessel. They're letting their body be the vessel for that. And so then we come into, we do a choreograph dance, and I like to do more rituals within that. And then we have the free dance. And it's so awesome seeing women come from the first class to their fifth class and seeing the change. Like the first one, it's like, I don't know how to move my body. Oh my God, and then in the end, they're just like moving their body around freely and just, in love with their body and in their movements and seeking more joy in their movements. And this is what gets really exciting. We then go through the other last ones, which is we come into stretching, savasana, and then sharing. We do a lot of community sharing, which means that women pair up and talk to each other and get them connected, which is just so beautiful. But what happens after each class is each woman becomes empowered with herself. She goes, I actually know how to feel good in my body. I actually know what it means to feel sisterhood. I actually know what it feels to feel joy. I know what it feels like to feel anger or disappointment or sadness. And I know how to work through that. But what it means is they start seeking those spaces and those places within their life that feel good. Feel good. And I came through last night when I'm going to share very openly, making love to my husband, because this is such a big space, right, for women too. We get so caught up on how we're performing, how we're actually doing. Does this feel good? We're thinking about, the shopping list, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but we can be, right? We can be distracted or focusing on how we look rather than how we feel. And it was just like, this message needs to be shared as well. Even when we're making love, letting go of how it looks, rather focus on how it feels. When you talk to your children, instead of focusing on how it looks to others or to yourself, how does it feel? When you're interacting with someone else at work, we can take this source of how can I make it feel even better for me? How can I make this feel good, rather than caring about not necessarily how it's looking, but how you're getting judged, like letting go of that judgment and worry. And what you do is then you role model, you become empowered, but you also role model to those around you. And it's such a foreign concept for so many people that you would just trigger the heck out of them. They'll be like, what are you doing? You just need to trust yourself and keep doing it, because it's so magical for yourself and for those around you to actually see what it feels like to do something that truly feels good based on how you want and what you want, and letting, again, like you said, your body starts becoming your compass. And instead of leading with your head, you start leading with your heart. And you start listening to the truth. What does my yes feel like? What does my no feel like? Is this situation for me? No. Is this, experience for me? Yes. And we start getting this connection happening back into our body. And then we trust ourselves and we trust our north. We trust that our joy can be our north, and we can experience it in the full embodiment through our heart.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And what I'm loving what you're saying there is to let go of the need for it to look one particular way. And I think that we limit so much of our spiritual expression, our feminine expression, and just our authentic expression in general, particularly as women, because we isolate an experience to have to look one way. And I even had a conversation around this with a client, I think, over the other day, and she asked me, is meditation the only way to access your intuitive knowing? And the short answer, without taking up 40 minutes of this conversation, is no. But the thing is that because we have an idea that, meditation has to look a particular way, or accessing your intuition has to look a particular way, and, your intuition has to be visual, which is clairvoyance, which completely negates and ignores the other senses that our intuition can speak to us. And so we limit so much of our capacity for receiving healing, love, knowing, guidance, simply because we are restricted in how it should come to us. And so I love what you've said and how you describe Qoya, in that it almost sounds like embodied meditative movement, in a sense, by going with the flow of the feminine energy, whereas sitting down and forcing yourself to try to be in stillness and silence, that's actually a masculine activity, but people think it's feminine simply because it looks like you're not doing anything, whereas actually you are doing something. You're trying to control and restrict your thinking and your attention. And so one of the best ways, I believe, for women to come back to their intuitive knowing is through the realm of sensation, is through going with the natural ebbs and flows of their feminine expression as it moves through this physical body. So I love that you've described it that way. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head for sure. And it's funny, like Rochelle Sheik, she said herself, when you are deep in this movement, as a teacher, I have to hold space. So I can't go deep as everyone else, because I'm there, I'm supporting and loving and guiding. But you see, and when I do go for a class, what happens is when you're fully in that moment and you fully feel, like you said, it's you're dropping into that different state of being, and it's amazing what comes through. Like my most creative spaces have come after a Qoya session. And because I am in flow, I feel good in my body. Like it's after yoga. I love yoga as well. So after I move my body in a way that feels good for me, I have this unlimited potential of letting my creativity flow, because I've just unblocked my vessel, which is my body. My libido. It's what allows me to pick and sense and feel and see and whatever else I need. And then I have that space to just, if I wish to, create. And I think that's where magic happens with women, when they're in flow, when they're connected to what feels good, because we are that creature of pleasure and sensuality and that feminine, essence of all what we can create. We birth so much into the world. And when we are in flow with that, like we are just unlimited. We are just so powerful. And I think that's what's scary for the Mogul world.
Legend.
But it is, you know what I mean? Like they can't understand it. And then you go out, like we went to this really random golf thing for my husband. Like he's such a grandpa, and he's so awesome. And we went to this Christmas in July thing for his Christmas thing, and it was like totally not my crowd, but it was great. Like they had this really old band called what is called the Recliners or something. I was like, oh my God.
Sounds invigorating.
It's crazy. But I had space to get up and have fun with my kids, not caring about what anyone else thought. And I just moved my body, because I'm like, I can either sit here and go, this is really not my space, or go, how can I embrace this more? And I think, doing that is so empowering as well. But the other people were like, oh my God, what is she doing? And my daughter and I, and just dancing and having fun. And I think, I love that I can do that for my daughter, but I love too that I can trigger other people as well, because when someone's triggered, they're going to think about why, what is it that I'm reacting to, depending on the awareness, but they're always going to have that, like, oh, I feel uncomfortable with her, dancing like so freely there or something, you know what I mean? Or she's like looking, they start mirroring their own issues, but then hopefully it gets them to the point where they go, well, actually, I want that. How do I seek that? How do I move towards that in my life? And I think that's in my work too, helping women to be comfortably uncomfortable, so they keep seeking those spaces that feel good for them and that growth. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And you just kind of knocked through the dominoes of what I think are the key blocks that stop women from speaking their truth and really embodying their authentic selves, which is, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, being self-conscious, and having a internal threshold for our own pleasure. And even before, when you were talking about the experience of making love with your husband, I think as women, when we go into our heads, when we're in that space of sacred union or intimacy, we can often do it as a way of disconnecting from our pleasure, because there's fear there. There's fear as women in exploring our depths, whether that's the emotional depths of our sadness, our darkness, moving into our shadow and shining light on the lessons that are there for us, but also through going into the depths of our pleasure, because there is where we experience that surrender, that expansiveness, that connection to oneness, and that really can be terrifying, because we don't have control in that space. We just are, and there is nothing but what is. So would you mind talking to us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, it's also, I can ask everyone who, invite those who are listening to this, if you are worried about judgment, if you're seeing that you're seeking external confirmation about what you're doing, this can be a really great awareness for you to come back and go, actually, I'm not connecting with myself. I'm not asking myself, what is it that I need right now? And with that self-worth and self-confidence, I want to expand on this a little bit. So the other day, every morning I do my own ritual, in a way that what feels good for me, and everyone's so different. But I really love reading a book that, inspires me and ignites me to think bigger. And that morning I was rereading, I just opened the passage, I think it's bibliography or something like that. It's called something where you just open a book to whatever it is that you need. And so I've been doing that a few mornings with The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So I got this book when Brookie was really sick from my kinesiologist, and I've been devouring it on and off the last 4 years. And it wasn't until that morning that I got it, that I really got it. And I want to share this with everyone because I think it's going to be very important in them being able to get to the space where they don't care about the judgment. They know that they can do whatever it is they want. We are all made up of the same matter. We are all connected to the same source. You and I, doesn't matter who has what, how much money in their bank account, we're all equal. It is only society and the people who are connected to those materialistic values that hold worth on people on their materialistic value, like how much money they have and all that kind of thing. But if we come back and we get rid of all that, no one's better than each other, no one. And the only thing that holds one person back compared to a person who, is moving through this, like to say for you and I, we've moved through a lot of our old limiting beliefs and that to be doing what we do. And what I want to share in this moment is we are only held back by our most limiting belief. Mm. That belief might be connected to an old trauma, an old experience, what someone said to us, especially if a stranger said something. For some reason, we are wired to care about what strangers think so deeply. It blows my mind, doesn't it? Mm. But if we come back to who we are in this moment, we are completely limitless. And if you choose to hold on to all that baggage, all those experiences, all those limiting beliefs, what's going to happen is your step forward is going to be pulled back by all those strengths. But if you choose to let all of that go, what happens is you can choose to be and do anything. And I know this might sound, you might have already heard about this, but I got it. Like I fully got it. That every day I wake up, I can choose my thoughts. Every day I can choose my actions. Every day I choose, do I want to show up in my business? Do I want to be with my kids? How do I want to be? If I react to my children, it's not usually reacting to who they are right now. It's reacting to what other experiences I've had and belief systems that I have towards them. And so every day I can choose to let this go. And I think when we fully embody that we're all equal, we are all so magical, we are all so deserving, we're all so willing and ready to be who we are. We just have to let go of all those old beliefs. Now, it sounds easy, but it's not, as we know. But what happened about 4 months ago is I went away on holidays and I was a bit in a turmoil space with my business and all this kind of stuff. And I just asked in my meditation, it was seriously only 5 minutes because I was, trying to be still and I couldn't be still, but I just breathed and just allowed myself just to rest for the few moments. And this meditation came straight through to me. And I feel really called to share today, if that's okay, Blair.
Yeah, of course. Please do.
So I'm just going to share it because you can all do this yourself and take it through if you feel comfortable doing it. And again, this is non-denominational. You can use the universal energy. This is your God, your goddesses, whoever you're really deeply connected to, the source, the all, whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever you truly believe in. So what I was guided to see was my body in a holographic image. And I could see myself just in front of me. And then what I was invited to do is, what is my most limiting belief? In this moment, what is my most limiting belief? And where is it in my body? And I'm like, can I do this? Oh my God, I'm just going to do it. And it felt like a wedge was in my sacral chakra. And anyway, so what the next step was to peel back the layers, and no gory, no blood, but just in a beautiful flower way, let go of those layers, remove the layers, and then remove and pull out that wedge, whatever it is. You don't have to delve into it if you don't want to. I don't. I just go, where is it? How can I remove it? Ask for support by my spiritual support team, and I remove that wedge. And then I invite God and Gaia to infuse that space that is now a void within me to fill up with unconditional love. And then I just imagine that golden energy just, pouring into me from these two hands above. And that's how it came through to me. And then I asked myself to, come back together and be whole once more. And then you just send so much love and gratitude for this experience to myself, to God and Guy, who I connect with deeply. And, you know, I've healed that. And then every day do it again and again and again. And because we're humans, we experience limiting beliefs every day. We create new limiting beliefs. But it might take a long time to get through the first thing of actually saying, I can do this myself. Because the thing is, we're coming out of the area of having gurus or having to always seek externally. But we can be our own healers. And this is a really powerful tool to be able to do that. Now, whoever's listening, it might resonate or come through differently, and that's fine because we all visualize and feel things differently. But know that we have that choice and that opportunity to do that work if we choose to.
Yes, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for everyone listening, go back and listen to that all again. Like, I really want people to, because I think that particularly, you know, when we do have such a high amount of access to information, we can become information junkies where we just take and we take and we take, and our brains become overloaded. And then we get this paralysis where we don't know what to implement when. So sometimes I think that the continuous quest for information as opposed to knowledge can sometimes be a little bit of spiritual bypassing, or can actually be sabotaging our growth. So if anything that Tammie just said resonated with you, go back and listen to it and actually set yourself a little challenge of over the next 4 days of just doing that every day and see how it feels. Actually see how it feels, because I think one of the big confusions that can happen for people is this confusion between understanding and knowing. And in my mind, when we understand something, it's a logical process, and it requires us to step out of our experience in order to observe the whole of it, to inject understanding as a framework for control. Whereas knowing is something that is an embodied experience, and that can only happen in the body, which is why I think that what you shared, Tammie, is so powerful, because you invite the body to share its own wisdom, to share its knowing, even if it doesn't make sense, even if we don't understand it from a cognitive, logical, you know, masculine linear perspective.
Yeah, most definitely, Blair. And it's becoming, like, again, I say it all the time, but becoming empowered. Empowered in all areas of our life. Because I know even on my spiritual journey, I started disempowering myself by seeking everything external. Like you said, information, you know, I do healing after healing after healing. You know, I'm like, why aren't I just healed already? You know, because I was just seeking everything externally. Not saying it didn't help, it did, but it really truly didn't, like, a big differences didn't happen until I started doing my own inner work. And I think that's the most uncomfortable thing about, you know, going on this path of spirituality, is doing the work within and taking the actions that we actually need to take to improve our life or whatever it is that you're seeking. You know, we have to do the work, and we live in a society where we want everything super easy. You know, our technology is making everything super easy, but this path is never going to be able to be done by someone else. You have to do it yourself. And I think it's taking that responsibility. And we've talked about it yesterday, Blair, when we were chatting. Like, the one way that you can do this is choosing yourself every single day. Like, every single day. How can I choose me? Is it in being more kind and compassionate towards yourself when you're experiencing something where you usually say, oh, you're stupid, or why are you doing that? Oh, you stuffed up again, you made a mistake. And letting that go and saying, wow, I can see how that didn't work, but I've learned how I can make this work better, you know, and being really loving and kind towards yourself. The other thing is, for me, is finding a ritual, a morning ritual that you can do every day that steps you through a process of connection, love, joy, stillness, movement. And it doesn't have to take long. For me, it's like an hour. And for me, it is going out, watching the sunrise, breathing in, setting my intention for the day, like doing my gratitude before I get out of bed. And sorry, I've done this all the wrong way. I'm getting a lot of watching, but this is really crazy because it doesn't seem like a self-love ritual, but it is. I do, as soon as I wake up, my gratitudes, what it is, you know, what am I so thankful for? Because sometimes I get caught up of what I don't have, especially in my business. Like, I want, and then I'm full of anxiety straight away as soon as I get out of bed. So it's like, what am I thankful for now? What can I see that I've done that, you know, is working well? And what can I congratulate myself on who I am right now? And then I go and brush my teeth and scrape my tongue, because that in itself is really good in an Ayurvedic practice, as people can go deeper into that. I have a big drink of warm water with lemon, And then I go out and watch the sunrise and do the breathing and the sitting on my yoga mat. And then I water my plants, go feed my horses, and then I'm done. Like, I feel so good. Like, that's my morning ritual. When I do that, I feel amazing. And it goes even further into yourself, how you touch your body when you do your self-care in the morning, using affirmations on your mirror, how you're touching your body, like more loving. The list goes on, but it's finding what works for you and something that you can do consistently, easy each day to start changing those habits.
Yes, and I think that's the key part. And I think that we can often give ourselves the excuse to not even try something because we create a reason why it won't work in our present reality. So it's like, well, I don't have time for that, or, I can't wake up with the sunrise, or I don't have a toothbrush, or whatever, like whatever kind of excuse. We place all these I can't because, as opposed to I can because. I can because it's going to feel amazing. I can because I deserve it, or I can because I choose to say no to this other thing that is not as high a priority as my own self-love and self-care. And so I love that you've said there, Tammie, that, to kind of break it down a little bit is to keep it simple and choose just one thing that you can commit to and build from there. I think that particularly on the spiritual path, we tend to want to do things in these massive overhauls. So it's like, I'm not eating sugar anymore after like having, a can of Coke a day for your entire life, or, I'm going to go for a 5K run every day as opposed to just going, for a walk to the park and sitting on the grass. So we tend to overcomplicate because we think that if something's really hard, then it must be working a lot better than the things that are easy, that bring us joy, that pull us into grace, which is actually where the deepest healing and love occurs.
Oh my God, yes. Seriously, it's funny. And I know you'd probably be able to relate to it too, in that, I used to overwhelm myself. I need to do my meditation for 20 minutes. I need to journal for half an hour. And in the end, I'd just be on my bed going, I don't know what to do, rocking back and forth, going myself out with my spiritual practices. It just done my head in. And then I was working with a spiritual coach. She said, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I need to meditate. She goes, but it doesn't feel good for you. I'm like, oh. She goes, so what are you doing? I'm like, because I think I have to. She goes, this is the thing. We even on this, like I've been doing this for, I don't know, however many years, but I still even go like, I can't, like, how is it that I don't think that I can still make this my own? But, now it is what feels so good to me. Today I'm going to do Qoya because I want to do the movement. My body is feeling called to do it. But I do those things that I told you before every single day because I know I can do it. It's very easy for me to do. And then the thing is, what the trick is here, right, is to make it so simple and so easy that every day you do it and you feel amazing because you accomplish these things that you set out to do. And then the other thing, say you do want to do that 5K run, doesn't seem as scary when you've been implementing these different changes in habits. So these things that you've been wanting to do becomes easier and easier because you can set things that you want to do and you do it. You have that structure, you have that organization, you can create the freedom within that structure and expand from it. But if you do those things every single day, you feel accomplished already and everything else is just a bonus. And we don't overwhelm ourselves with crazy things of having to make our, spiritual ritual look like a certain way. It's just crazy how we do that to ourselves, even in the spiritual realm,
But I think especially in the spiritual realm, because we kind of want this yardstick for how spiritual we are based on what everyone else is doing. So I think that, the spiritual realm can almost be a deeper source of comparison and dissatisfaction and feelings of inadequacy than, other areas because it is such a deeply personal thing. So, I love that you've shared that it's okay. And it's actually a requirement. I think one of the best ways to tell if something is spiritually healing for you is if it's of your own division, if you've made it up yourself. Like, it feels good for me to do this thing this way. I as opposed to sitting perfectly still in meditation, you might enjoy rocking backwards and forwards or humming to yourself as you meditate. Like, just bringing in those little bits that are your unique essence amplifies your spiritual essence because it's from you, it's from yourself, it's from your own knowing, not from reading it in a book or a guru telling you what to do.
Oh, this is massive. Yes. I just have a huge yes resounding through. I just want to go, yes. It's funny because, this is why I became a coach, because I didn't want to tell people how to do life. And Even in Qoya and circles, you're not telling people how to do things. They're learning from that. Like, they're actually connecting to their own wisdom. And that's what's exciting, because if you get someone who goes to a dietitian or whatever, and the dietitian said, you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and you go to a PT trainer and they say, you did this and this. For me, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't do anything that anyone else tells me to do. I'll try it for a little while, but it falls by the wayside because it's external to me. It doesn't feel right to me because it's advice from someone else. And I know that if I want to be healthy, I eat good food. I eat food that is, raw as possible, naturally, no preservatives, not, processed, all this kind of stuff, organic. I know it, and we all know it. But the thing is, we use these excuses to make it more difficult, so we don't partake in it. And then we have the guilt that comes with it, and I spent money on this and now I don't do it, and we just get into that spiral again. But if we come back and we ask ourselves each and every moment, what do I need right now with our food? What do I need right now? If you have a feeling, what is it that I'm feeling? Like, take that moment. What am I feeling? And what do I need to support me through this? Oh, okay, today I really need to journal that. Oh no, today I need to tap. Today I need to just go and breathe. It could be whatever it is. And even when you're getting to that reactive space, I want to share, as a mum, I get into that reactive space a lot with 3 wild kids. And, the thing is, I am so compassionate towards myself every moment that I go into that space that I don't want to be, who I didn't think I'd ever be, which is like, oh my God, kids, what are you doing? And instead of freaking out all the time, I ask myself, what do I need in this moment to support me? Take a step back, take a breath. And, even my 4-year-old's good at going, Mum, just take a breath. Just take a breath. Step back. So I have this little support crew around me everywhere I go now, helping me, helping myself. So it's these things that we can do to really empower ourselves. And we need to remember that we do know what is best for ourselves. We just have to listen to it and trust it, rather not with our head so much, but more with our heart.
And take action on it. I think that a lot of the time, particularly when we are intuitive women, or we are, able to connect to ourselves, sometimes just knowing isn't enough. It's the action. We need to meet the universe halfway. We have to bring that knowing into manifest form through action. So, and I think that what you mentioned about the self-care rituals and really ritualizing our moments of self and cultivating those, and sometimes forcibly creating those moments of mindful stillness and presence in our day, is the vehicle for bringing that into our reality. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Thanks, Blair. No, it's amazing. And I just want to say, if you're starting out on this path of intuition and connecting to it, it's even for me this morning, right? I feel that I'm pretty intuitive, doing what I do. And I had the thought that I need to put in, something for Brookie for her lunchbox right now, because I was going to forget. It just can't be going to forget. I'm like, no, I won't. And then I didn't do it, and I forgot it. So, it's even these moments, in those really small moments, that's when it matters the most, is, are you going to trust what you've been told, instead of waiting to that big moment of a huge life decision and trying to trust something that you didn't trust back when it was really small. Do you know what I mean? It's really trust in every day and in every moment, in the most, unforeseen places that you would never think of. But it's these things how we grow our intuition. And again, it's not necessarily the seeing, it's the unknowing. And for me, that's been quite difficult for me to, fully embody, because how do you, sort from the thoughts to the divine knowing and all this kind of stuff. But it is a journey, and we all will find a way if we seek it. But again, it is definitely taking the action. If you ask yourself, what do I need this moment? And that moment says you need to go out and, spend 20 minutes in nature. It's not go, okay, I'll do that after the washing. Or it's like, no. You just ask, do it now, and you'll receive the benefits. You'll feel so much better, and, all that kind of thing. So,
yeah. Perfect. Oh, well, thank you. Tammie, I feel like we could talk for hours. We could just keep going down all these different paths. So I definitely think that having you back on is going to be amazing. But is there anything that is there any kind of parting words or anything that you would really like to impart or feel called to share before we begin to close the space?
Yeah, most definitely, Blair. I would invite everyone to ask themselves and just bring awareness to, how are they choosing themselves throughout the day? Where are they saying yes to themselves, and why? And where are they saying no and why. And like this could be a whole nother segment, but I just want to bring that awareness, because you understanding how you're treating yourself throughout your day is going to change the way you actually show up in the world. Because when you realize how hard you're being on yourself, you're saying no because of what if or whatever, you start seeing that you can start choosing you. You can start saying yes to those things that you've always wanted to do and no to those things that don't serve you. And then you will start exploring and expanding. You'll start shedding those toxic friendships or relationships or situations. You'll start creating a more supportive environment. But it all comes down to the awareness of how you treat yourself, that you have a choice, and you give yourself permission to choose you in one way, to practice and cultivate self-love, because you deserve, every person in the whole wide world deserves to feel love from themselves, so they then can feel love from others.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's so perfect. What a beautiful way to close what has been an incredibly beautiful discussion. So thank you so much, Tammie, for joining us on the podcast. And I know that so many women are going to experience amazing benefit from your wisdom. So thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you, Blair. You are such an amazing host, and I have loved talking to you.
You can find Tammie on both Facebook and Instagram by searching for Earth Radiance, and also connect with her on her website at www.earthradiance.com. And I truly hope that you loved listening to this episode as much as Tammie and I loved having the conversation. And if this episode has been of service to you, then I invite you to subscribe on either iTunes or SoundCloud so you don't miss any future episodes. So until next time, beautiful woman, I'm Blair Rhianna, and I cannot wait to see you shine your light in the way that only you can. Bye for now.